Hello, fifth graders. Our math lesson today is talking about dividing fractions. This is a concept that can be a little tricky, but it's not that hard, especially once you give yourself some type of object with which to work to help you practice understanding the concept. So anytime I talk about division, we've already related the fact that division is just another way to write a fraction. So if I have, for example, 12 over 4, that's just 12 divided by 4, right? Okay, I'm going to add that to what I've already made for my thing because I just now thought of that. 12 over 4. Okay, so here I've got 12 over 4. That's the same thing as 12 divided by 4. And we already know that's 3. So if I look at the picture that I've drawn to represent that, I drew 12 stars and I divided it into 4 groups. And each of the groups has the same amount, 3. That tells me my answer. So 12 things divided into 4 groups equals 3 things in each group. Right? Okay, so that's dividing whole numbers. 12 divided by 4 equals 3. All right, well, if I'm going to divide a fraction, I took something very simple to begin with. So I have one circle. And if I'm going to divide that circle into halves, let me do this because I don't think I can do that backwards. Now, I took that one thing and I divided it into halves. How many parts did I end up with? 2. So there's my answer. Keep in mind, division means that I've got equal parts or equal size parts, and I'm dividing it into however it tells me to divide it. Because I started out with only one thing instead of 12 things, this is easy to represent with just one circle, and I divided into halves. So if we had been in class, we would have gotten full-size Hershey bars to work with today so that we could see what it's like when I'm dividing by fractions. You probably know that a Hershey bar is divided into those sections. That way you can share it easily with your friends, right? So what we're going to do, since we don't have Hershey bars all to pass out to you at home, everybody's got paper, right? You can use a piece of computer paper or plain white paper, construction paper. You can even use your lined notebook paper, whatever you have, okay? So I have one whole piece of paper, and I'm going to divide it in half. This represents the same thing as the circle that we just did. And if I look at it, my fold lines are going to tell me how many parts I end up with, right? Okay, so I've divided it in half. I have 2 parts. I can take the same piece of paper and divide it in half again. So what I did was I took my half and divided it in half. And look how many parts I end up with when I take a half divided by a half. I have 4 parts. They're all 1/4 of the whole. So my answer for 1/2 divided by a half would be 1/4. Because now 4 parts. Excuse me, it'd be 4. Because I've made 4 parts out of my 1/2 divided by a half. Okay, I can do the same thing again. Let's take my 1/4 and divide it in half. Notice what's happening with my parts is they're getting smaller too, right? As I get more parts. All right, so I took my 1/4 and I divided it in half. Now if I open up my piece of paper, I'm going to see how many parts I have now. how many is it? 8, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So every time I divided it again, I get more parts. So let's try it one more time. Now, let's see, I was at, I think it was 1/8, right? I was at 1/8. Okay, so 1/8 divided by a half, because I took my 1/8 and divided it in half. So 1/8 divided by 1/2 is going to give me how many parts now? And I can tell by my fold lines, I have 16 parts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 parts. So 1/8 divided by 1/2 gives me 16 parts. All right, I'm going to cut it this time so that we can demonstrate it one more time. Okay, take my whole and I divide it in half. One whole divided by a half gives me 2. Right? Now if I take my half and divide it in half, I'm not going to get a fraction for an answer. 1/2 divided in half gives me 4. 4 parts, 4 equal size parts. So 1/2 divided by a half gives me 4. And I could go on, but I think you get the right idea. This is just an exploratory activity today. You don't have a math page to do today. You'll have the math page that accompanies this after spring break. I felt like it was best to give us a little overall introduction about dividing fractions prior to actually doing the work of it. And hopefully you do the activity along with it. And you can practice it with other things as well. You can get yourself a Hershey bar and practice it with that. And test that out. See what it is like when you divide a whole thing in half and then divide that half into half. And then you will see how many parts you're accumulating as you go. Because anytime I'm dividing, I'm separating it into smaller parts. Just like I've learned to do with whole numbers. I hope this helps, and I hope you do the activities. Have a great spring break.